Hi everyone! Today, me and my friend Tiara will be presenting about numbered heads together, one of the techniques in cooperative learning. Okay, so let's get started with what is this technique. Okay, so numbered heads together is basically a strategy that holds each student accountable for learning the material. Basically, everyone is responsible for mastering the material. And I'm stating this because, well, let me give you a little overview of the technique. The students will work in groups. The teacher will ask each of the groups a question, and only one of the member gets to answer. But no one will know who will answer the question. Therefore, everyone must be prepared. Everyone has to learn the material well in order to answer the question. Because if one cannot answer what the teacher asks, then the whole group could be affected, and we don't want that. Okay, next, why should we use this technique? Well, this is a technique that we should use to ensure more equitable response opportunities in the classroom. Usually, we tend to witness that higher achievers and lower achievers get different types of questions. Higher achievers get more difficult ones, while lower achievers get easier questions. And this pattern is noticed by the entire class. Sometimes there are also certain scenarios where only high achievers that are more noticeable, they get called more often, they get to answer questions more often, while students that are not really academically excellent gets, well, to put it simply, ignored, sort of neglected. And in the long run, this could cause low achievers to feel sort of disheartened. They could feel unmotivated. They could lose their motivation to learn. They could feel like they just cannot reach the same level as those high achievers, and that the teacher doesn't believe that they can because they're not given enough opportunities. And this technique, by calling out random students, helps with that. So it creates an equal opportunity for everyone to respond. Another thing is that this strategy is flexible. So you can throw either open-ended or close-ended questions to the students according to the objective that you have set. If you want the students to first master the basics of a certain material, then closed-ended questions could be used. As the class progresses, teacher can give students open-ended questions so that students can analyze and synthesize the material that they're working on. In the process, other students can also respond to, for example, student A. When student A is voicing out his or her opinion, other students can respond and also give their reasoning to why they think it's correct or not correct. They could also give responses by giving a thumbs up, thumbs down, or perhaps an okay and an X. So you could mix and match a little bit. It doesn't have to be implemented in a certain way. You could mix and match this technique with other sorts of strategies. Okay, so if I want to implement this in my classroom, what do I have to do? First, of course, form a group. You could form groups of 4 to 6 students, and then in that group, the students first have to label themselves. So who will be student number 1 up until who will be student number 4? They could decide this amongst themselves, or you as the teacher could decide for them. You can create a lottery, for example, and then they can take it out, and number 1 means, yeah, student number 1. It's that simple. And then next, after everyone has decided, you can give your question. And as I have previously stated, according to the objectives that you want to reach at the end of the class, you could decide whether to use open-ended or closed-ended questions. But make sure that it is a high consensus question. That means the question could have multiple answers to it, so that students are not just stuck on giving the same answers. Okay, so after that, it's time for them to put their heads together to discuss. You could give around 15 to 20 minutes for the students to discuss, not too short so that everyone can voice out their opinion, but not too long so that they don't go off track. After discussion time is over, it's time for the teacher to call a number. So you could directly just call a random number, or you could use a dice and again a lottery. For example, student number 2, for example, number 2, the teacher says number 2. So every number 2 student must stand up, and then the teacher will choose one number 2 student from a group, and then that student will respond to the teacher's question. After that student responds, then other students from other groups can respond or clarify, or perhaps ask why, or perhaps ask, but what has to be remembered is that you as the teacher has to monitor this. So you have to make sure that it runs smoothly, and that, for example, you decide which student will respond first, which will respond second, things like that. Another variation of this technique is that after a number comes up, number 2, the students who know the answer, the number 2 students specifically, gets to raise their hand, and the teacher chooses one of the students who raises their hands. And as I have stated, other students can then respond. A small caution that we have to pay attention when implementing this technique is that after the question is asked and the students get to respond, if there are only a small amount of students who can respond, the teacher should have all the groups discuss again, reach a consensus again. So for example, out of 7 groups, only 2 groups were able to give a response or to raise their hand. Before the specific students are allowed to share their answer, so when they have just raised their hand, you can immediately say, okay, I don't see enough hands. Please go back and discuss again until everyone, or at least until for example 6 or 5 groups can respond. So this will better ensure that everyone understands the material. So when can we use it? Specifically for teaching English, we can use it to teach reading, first of all. So we can throw comprehension questions, and everyone can work together to find the answer. The questions posed can be tailored to relate to the student's personal life, so outside of the text alone, contextually designed questions, and then we as teachers can monitor their comprehension and the use of learned strategies by observing their responses. You could also use it to teach writing, and the way to do this is that ask them to evaluate a writing using a rubric. So they will evaluate as a group, and they will also score as a group. In doing this, each of the students will have to come to a consensus to why did the group give this certain score. And when it's time to speak up, the students can explain why did they give this grade, why did they give that grade. So by using this technique in writing, it demonstrates what students should do when editing and self-assessing their writing, and it can also help them just foster their ability to justify their reasoning by evaluating thinking. Other than that, we can also implement it to subjects such as math, social studies, science, basically any subject work, as long as you can make it work, and that there is a certain topic or material that can be discussed and that needs a high consensus. Okay, next my friend Tiara will continue.
Hello, hi. My name is Mutiara Olia. I want to continue Lisa's presentations about number heads together. So I want to talk about the variations on number heads together. Number 1. After a student's response, the teacher can have the others agree or disagree with a thumbs up or thumbs down. Number 2. In a multiple part answer, the teacher can have students from different groups each give part of the response. Number 3. All the students can simultaneously or at the same time give the answer at the count of 3. Next, number 4. All the students responding can write the answer on chalkboard or a group slate. And the last, number 5, after an incomplete response, the teacher can ask for another person to add to that answer. Okay, next we talk about ideas for using numbered heads together. After reading a story, review the parts of the plot. For example, make sure everyone on your team can name the characters, the climax, the problem, the setting, them, or etc. For vocabulary review, students can give the synonym or antonym of a word. They can add the missing word in a sentence, or they can spell it. Next, students can review irregular verbs or plural nouns. Before beginning a writing session, review the types of punctuations or capital letters that may be needed. The last, students can review various punctuation marks in context of writing, ask questions regarding punctuating the text. Okay, now we talk about the benefits. Number 1, positive interdependence. The students are able to learn from each other. They must also work together to ensure there is one product to their learning. They must check that everyone can understand and answer the questions. Number 2, individual accountability. Students are accountable to each other for sharing ideas. The student may also be required to share their partner's idea to another pair or whole group. Every student must be able to give the group response to the questions. Next, number 3, equal participation. Each student within the group has an equal opportunity to share. It is possible that one student may try to dominate. The teacher can check this doesn't happen. Next, the last is multi-level. This kind of learning can be used in any kinds of level, but of course it has to be adjusted with the material given. Okay, besides the advantages, there are always drawbacks, right? So number 1, high achieving students can be too dominating in the group discussions, and as a result, the low achievers may not have a chance to voice their opinion. Number 2, some students may not try to reach a consensus and just agree with what the smartest member of the group says. That's right. Number 3, the last, the discussion might not go smoothly or turn into an argument if certain members are stubborn or unable to reach a consensus.
Before you go, here's a short video demonstrating this technique in class. Enjoy!
You have to make sure everybody is ready in the group, and then I'll tell which one I'm calling. Please say more. Okay. Okay, thank you, Kate.
So that's all from our group, and thank you.